Is 11 Madison Park worth over $1,200 for 2 people? Or more specifically, the $1,219.40 that my wife and I paid for their full tasting plus their most expensive wine pairing? And that's before we even paid the tip. 11 Madison Park used to be service included, but no longer. And you have to prepay that entire bill before you even step foot in the 3 Michelin starred hallowed halls of EMP. It's also a non-refundable deposit that you're prepaying in advance, so you're going even if you're sick. The point is, this is an expensive commitment, but for a restaurant that used to be #1 in the world, I had to try it for the first time. Plus, it was my birthday, so my wife gave me carte blanche. She's amazing, by the way. A lot has changed with 11 Madison Park since that #1 ranking in 2017. First came the split between the current executive chef and owner Daniel Humm and his former front of the house partner Will Guidara. Now, one of the main reasons why I also wanted to try 11 Madison Park was because Will Guidara recently published a book in 2023, Unreasonable Hospitality, a must read, and it described his experiences at 11 Madison Park. What made the former partnership between these two men so powerful was the balance that they had in their approach to not only front of the house, but the importance of the kitchen. It was truly a balanced and equal partnership, and that made them so effective, something that is fairly rare in the restaurant world. They became known for a trademark approach of delighting diners with bespoke surprises. One of my favorite stories was about Guidara overhearing a group of visitors, tourists to New York City, talking about how they had tried everything in New York that they wanted except for a street New York City hot dog. And Guidara, hearing this, ran out or sent someone out to a food cart to get a hot dog. They cut it up, plated it, fine dining style, maybe with little dollops of mustard, and presented it to the guests, who were floored. The word was that Daniel Humm had continued this practice of unreasonable hospitality. So my expectations going into this meal were pretty high. We'd also just recently dined at Restaurant Daniel, not Daniel Humm, but Daniel Boulud. And that's a 2 Michelin star restaurant. We had an incredible experience. So if that was 2 stars, what would a 3-star Michelin restaurant be like? I'd never experienced anything like this before. But before we get into the actual meal itself, there's one important point that I haven't even mentioned yet. 11 Madison Park made a huge change, going full vegan. They had sustainability concerns, environmental concerns, just overall human health concerns. So Daniel Humm wanted to play a role with his restaurant in eliminating all animal products from the menu. So that's right, no butter, no cream, obviously no meat or fish. Everything was vegan. But despite this monumental, massive change, 11 Madison Park retained their 3 Michelin stars, the first all-vegan restaurant to ever achieve such a claim. It was quite the bold move to remove signature dishes from their menu, like the butter poached lobster or the honey lavender duck, which made 11 Madison Park famous. All of these changes made my wife and I even more intrigued to try this restaurant, so we were super excited going into this. Now to the meal. 11 Madison Park overlooks one of my favorite parks in all of New York City, Madison Square Park. It also sits at the base of a historic Art Deco building that also houses the Swiss bank UBS, which is fitting because Daniel Humm is Swiss. When you enter, you're immediately hit with the grand nature of the space. Vaulted ceilings, massive windows, gorgeous modern art and classic decor, as if you're dining in the Gilded Age. We chose the full 11-course tasting menu, 11 Madison Park, 11 courses. I loved the detail already. We paired this with their most expensive wine pairing, which may have been a little overboard because the price went up from $195 per person to $365 per person, and that's just for the wine. But we wanted the true, full, best experience. Before diving into the tasting experience, we had to sample the bar. The plant-based theme extends to their cocktails as well. I enjoyed the squash, a reposado tequila drink with punchy floral notes and a refreshing finish. My wife ordered the pomegranate, a sherry cask single malt tempered beautifully by the peach liqueur, clove, and lemon. It was a great start, but from the outset, I was immediately disappointed by the darkness of the space. I thought it was going to be hard to fully appreciate it and to enjoy the beauty of the food as well. The first course, though, set an impressive tone. A radish tea with coconut and lime leaf. It was so warm and welcoming, served at the perfect temperature, not too hot, but not too lukewarm either. The second course continued the winter radish celebration, a radish salad with mint and sea fennel. We finished this radish trio with a dumpling for course number 3, radish with bamboo. All 3 courses were exceptional and promoted the radish flavor to perfection. Then they cleared the table and this meat grinder appeared. My first thought, beef tartare tableside? Until I remembered, no, John, you're vegan tonight. A server arrived with the most orange carrots I've ever seen. He described how they peel and soak them in olive oil with herbs. Beautiful simplicity. He also detailed how they source these directly from farms in upstate New York or from the farmer's market in Union Square, which we love to frequent. The wooden boards that he scooped the ground up carrots into were specifically designed just for this course. It was served with rye bread, mustard, and horseradish sauces, along with a number of spices and herbs to include in your carrot tartare so you could make it customized to your liking. Absolutely delicious. I was so in heaven with this dish. But unfortunately, what goes up must come down. The next course was tonburi, collard greens, kohlrabi, and seaweed. The texture was off. It was too soft and wet for my taste. Plus, I'm just personally not a huge fan of collard greens. The sauce, though, provided a good balance. So the dish wasn't a complete fail, but it's not one that I would try again, unlike the others that preceded it. But the next course, cabbage, more than made up for it. I was waiting for a truffle or caviar dish, and Chef Daniel Humm did not disappoint. Cabbage on a bed of tofu with shaved truffles and sesame, everything married together beautifully. Absolutely divine. We were then given a bread break from the action. I think these were brioches. They melted in our mouths. And check out the creative squash butter presentation. Stunning and delicious. That squash butter did not last long. It transitioned perfectly into our next course, which was a squash dish paired with smoked Thai chili and lemongrass. I love the Asian flavors on this one, but it otherwise didn't stand out like the carrot tartare and the cabbage did. Then this giant dome appeared. The strangest part, though, wasn't the structure itself, but the person who served it. The same person who took our coats when we arrived. Yes, this person right here. She suddenly came over to serve us this next course. It just felt very random. It's great that 11 Madison Park dedicates a team of people, including a sommelier, to each table, but it's also nice to develop a rapport with the server. That element was simply missing here. This next course was surprisingly our least favorite of the night. Shiitake mushrooms, which were grilled with short grain rice and yuzu kosho. I've seen this dish on the menu for at least a year at 11 Madison Park, so it's clearly a fan favorite, but it simply wasn't for us. Perhaps it was specific to our dishes, but underneath those mushrooms was a bed of rice, and maybe the proportion was just way off, but it was just like a giant pile of rice that after drizzling the sauce on, just became very wet and soggy and mushy. It just lost its nice harder texture, and it was just way too much rice. And for a dish billed as the main course of the tasting experience, it really underperformed. Then we moved on to desserts. This grape sorbet was refreshing and smooth, nice crunch too. Unfortunately, when we were done, we waited about 15 to 20 minutes before someone came by again to either take our empty bowls or refill our wine and present us with the next wine pairing. Granted, it was very packed. It was the day after Christmas, but still, at this point, there were 5 people or so who had been waiting on our table. It was just a little odd that nobody came by. When someone did return, I ordered the coffee ahead of the main dessert course. I was eager to try it, given that I read that 11 Madison Park puts considerable effort even into their coffee for dessert, something I had also learned from the Unreasonable Hospitality book by Will Guidara. And I've got to say, it was one of the best cups of coffee I've ever had. It was rich, buttery smoothness, but also balanced against the bold, strong taste of a good cup of coffee. Then my birthday candle arrived to little fanfare. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to sing or anything, but a little something, happy birthday even, would have been nice. The main dessert course was pear with chocolate and ginger. It was good, but not memorable. What was memorable though was this next and final course, which was called Name That Milk. We were encouraged to blind taste test 4 different milks, plant-based of course, coconut, rice, hemp, and pumpkin. We had to match what our guesses were to the right chocolate. I went 2 out of 4, my wife though, 4 out of 4. As a parting gift, they gave us 2 jars of their 11 Madison Park granola, which I ate for breakfast with some almond milk, keeping the vegan tradition alive. Delicious granola. So was 11 Madison Park worth over $1,200 for 2 people before you even talk about tip? Before I give my final answer and a rating out of 10, let's run through the pros and cons of the experience. Pro number 1, innovative vegan menu. It's bold, audacious, and adventurous. There were also no imitation games played, which I consider to be the lowest form of art. For example, they weren't putting seitan on a plate and calling it, chicken. This menu was truly charting its own course, so big props to the chef. The food was overall very well executed aside from a few notable exceptions. And 3, overall, the service was outstanding. I even had someone walk me to the bathroom. The sommelier in particular was awesome. And that leads to my final pro, number 4, great wine pairings. Like the vegan menu, the pairings were bold, audacious, and adventurous. There were varietals in there that I had really never even heard of or experienced, which, I pride myself with knowing at least a little bit about wine. You should check out some of our Napa and Sonoma videos. But a lot of the wines here were really interesting, and I'd highly recommend, if you're going to do the wine pairing, to go with the more expensive version if you can, because it's quite an experience. But for that amount of money, we need to be critical as well, as any restaurant reviewer would be, and highlight the cons. There were 2 underwhelming dishes that just simply did not perform. And if you're going to a 3 Michelin star restaurant or even a 1 Michelin star restaurant, the expectation is that every dish is basically perfect. But the tamburi, and particularly the shiitake mushroom, those 2 dishes, maybe they were just one-offs for us, because many other people seem to like at least the shiitake mushroom one. It was disappointing because everything else was simply outstanding, especially the carrot tartare, which both my wife and I agreed that was our favorite dish. The second con was no surprises, not even an amuse-bouche. I told them that it was my birthday, but aside from getting just a candle, there was nothing else that they did. They didn't even offer to give us a kitchen tour, which I've seen in other YouTube videos. It's not like I was expecting something huge here. But to give you an example, at Restaurant Daniel, they brought out a cheese cart. Unexpected, but we got to select a few cheeses to sample from the cart, and it was fun. It was an interesting, unexpected, surprising experience, and at a restaurant that really gained its status and celebrity following for being a bespoke curator of experiences. It was pretty disappointing. The third critique is that there were long periods of no service. That only happened a couple of times, and as I mentioned, the dining room was packed. Also, I don't know if they were just trying to give my wife and I some privacy and let us enjoy our experience, but there were just too many times where our glasses were either empty or empty plates stayed on our table for too long. But overall, like I said in the pros, the service was amazing. I was just a little surprised by a couple instances where it seemed like they may have forgotten about us. And as a side note, this is not really a con, more like a personal preference, but why is there no dress code any longer? There were all these people that walked in with like dirty sneakers or not even like a nice sweater on. Let alone forget about a suit jacket. A full suit and tie is probably not necessary, but they still need some degree of dress code because people who don't take it seriously and aren't respectful ruin the experience for everybody else. So in conclusion, perhaps I'm being a little nitpicky, but it's a 3 Michelin star restaurant and the expectations were high going into this. Many other people continue to love their experiences at 11 Madison Park, but I was not blown away. It was a solid meal, but not something I'll be rushing to recommend to anyone, especially when you can pay about $400 less and go to Daniel. So overall, I would give 11 Madison Park a 7 out of 10. Very solid experience, but not something I need to rush back to. But please, let me know what you think. I was just trying to be as candid, open, honest, and critical as possible. But if you've been to 11 Madison Park recently, tell me in the comments what your thoughts are, or if you think I'm being unfair here. I hope this video was fun, informative, and interesting. Fine dining experiences are truly some of my favorite adventures in life, especially sharing them with a loved one or a good friend. And I hope you get to embark on one of those journeys soon. Until next time, thanks for watching. Cheers.
This means I have to go to Vegas.
You have to go to Vegas?
I have to go to Vegas.